YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and other places have influencers that would tell you what to do, who to buy, how to act, or the tools that they make to make your life easier. Some will even try to sell you picks. Others will try to push you in one direction by the content they create. It's all laughable. You don't need anything from any of them at all. You need to be you, and you need to define what you are in the sports card space. Are you a collector? Awesome. Are you a flipper? You do you. Are you a combo of the two? Get you some. I'm not here to tell you what to do, and I never will. I am here to give you my 3 foundational principles that I have used over the years to steer my collection as well as my buying and selling habits. I believe they could be helpful to all of you. Number 1, avoid fear of missing out. FOMO can be beaten, but it's all about focus, caring, and critical thinking. It's frankly just that simple, which is also what makes it so hard. At its core, fear of missing out, or FOMO, is envy and self-esteem, right? It's less about making money on that card or cards, and more about not being the one left holding the bag when everyone else has made the move, and how that can truly make you feel. You can change this mindset and act critically and successfully to positively increase your mindset, collection, and bankroll. But first, why does this even happen? FOMO is triggered at high levels by social media usage, which is how many of us live our lives now. We subscribe to all these big channels, and frankly some smaller ones, in a niche or a topic that we love. And at least in the sports card space, a lot of the larger channels are large-scale folks with big wallets, big cards, big dollar moves, and big deals. And if you notice, if one channel starts talking about a card, another channel will follow suit. Given the age of a lot of these standard popular YouTube influencers, there's a certain personality and a certain stigma that makes a lot of us watching not want to miss the show. Remember this. Everyone giving you player advice is doing it to be self-serving. It could be to pump and dump to increase their bankroll, reach, and brand. They might not even know they're doing it for selfish reasons, but they are. Remember, these influencers are not true experts in the truest sense of the word. Most of them have some level of experience, but it's really about the flash and the follow. A quick buck is not a real thing. If it seems so simple and so obvious, then it is too good to be true, or at least the odds are that it is. It's that part that you have to break. It's easy for people like me to say, forget FOMO, which I do say a lot if you're one of the people that have heard me talk before. But how do you actually do it? In a weird human sort of way, you can increase your own anxiety while trying to cut back on the FOMO. Irony, right? What's the best way to do it, and how can you do it? It starts by detaching emotion. Here, let me explain. Change your focus. I don't mean this card or that card. I mean focus on what you have instead of what you don't. And focus on real people, not people trying to puff themselves up on video. Keep this centered around the sports card hobby. Find people you can connect with that have a like status or mindset. Find a personality like you, a delivery like you. Call it a kindred spirit, if you will. Watch that person on social media as they have the same style as you, the same personality as you, the same likes as you. You don't have to be like everyone else. You do you. But no matter what, remember, you're watching for entertainment value. You're not comparing sizes here. You're just trying to be entertained, like watching a sitcom. But also, be grateful, not to others, but to yourself for what you have. If you are in the sports card hobby, big or small, that means the rest of your life is in such a way that it allows you to have a side hustle or a hobby. That in itself is great. But the biggest thing is to use critical thinking if listening to others' opinions. The use of critical thinking allows you to calm out all the white noise. At a top level, it's all about objective analysis and reasoned judgment that helps form reasoned conclusions. It's about being an active learner rather than a passive listener or just an ingester of information. It's about having a system in place to help you analyze problems instead of instinct, groupthink, or relying on everyone else to tell you what you should do. Some things you should be doing, calling a roadmap, if you will, when critical thinking are things like identify the point of view of the person giving you information and determine if that opinion is valid or unbiased. Determine if you can find any weaknesses in the argument being made. Be objective, think about things from another angle, and see if it can be valuable or valid. Heck, in practice, it would look something like this. As an example, let's say a few years ago, influencers or folks in the hobby were really high on Gary Sanchez. Because, by the way, they were. They saw the power, and the fact that he was a Yankee, and everyone quickly jumped on the buy it now bandwagon. Person after person followed suit. They bought, and the card started to go up. Your FOMO started to try to kick in, but you paused, did the research, and applied some critical thinking. You found his defense was bad. His swing and miss was bad. He had a really high batting average of balls in play, and there were many other indicators that told you he frankly wasn't worth it. You sat back, passed on him, and moved on to other players. And because you did the work, you felt great about the decision. And when you look back later, you realized you made a good call, and everyone else that jumped on the bandwagon was left holding the bag. Now, research is a key part of critical thinking. So let's move on to that pillar. Research. Real, regimented research can keep you from going broke, whether sports card investing or collecting. At a minimum, it can help you feel good about a repeatable decision process. I am serious. There is a repeatable 9-step process that will almost guarantee you never go card broke and continue to succeed regardless of the current state of the hobby. Everyone can do it. And I mean everyone. And frankly, it's pretty darn simple. I just need to give you a little backstory first so you know. In the early 2000s, I was flailing in the hobby like a lot of people I know now. Much like many of you, I acted reactively and tried to jump on trends, listening to others' opinions and believing they must know more than me. I had FOMO before FOMO was even a thing, and the next thing you know, I was broke. Well, sports car broke anyway. Because let's face it, you better be using extra money in sports cards and not paying your mortgage or car payment with the money you're expecting to turn on profit. If you look back, I bet you can see what's happened to a lot of the moves that you've made. Didn't go great, right? But how can you fix a problem like that? Research is the secret potion to success in the sports card hobby. It's not sexy, but it is very effective. And when I say research, I don't mean listen to that YouTube video, read this person's blog post, or anything like that. I mean, do your own research. Be your own person. Why? Because research limits emotion. Research will help you narrow your scope. Research teaches you how to problem solve. Research can show you where you went wrong. Research stokes curiosity. And research can allow you to find, gauge, and seize opportunity you didn't even know was there. It's more regimented than you're thinking, but it's not as complex as this might make it sound. So what do? Be the tortoise, not the hare. Stop rushing. Trust your work and not others' opinions. Will you succeed with every move you research? No, of course not. But your win percentage will approach all-star or Hall of Fame levels. To really do it, research is more than just a Google search. There is a roadmap or a formula to follow. Earlier I mentioned mine is 9 steps. Let me explain them to you. Take as many or as little of them as you like. Begin by asking yourself thoughtful questions. Do data collection. Take that data and do analysis to see if you can find any trends. Search for patterns and interpret that analysis. Take all that information and come up with a solution. Now, take a step back and question that judgment and how you came to it. As you peel that back, question the lack or obvious bias in the data results you created. Now repeat it and refine it until you convince yourself go for it or move on, depending on what your analysis created, i.e., take action. This is something you need to do always, not just every once in a while. Will you buy less cards? Probably, but you'll be better for it. Will you do better per card? Most likely. Idea, research, purchase or don't purchase, and repeat. That's the recipe. And it works because it's not opinion. There's no flyer, just data and informed decisions. Don't worry if others disagree with you. You do you. Is that a lot to ask? How you internally answer that question defines what you want to be in the hobby. But remember, if you don't put in the work, you can't be mad at the results. You can't blame the others that you trusted. You can only blame yourself. Or you can roll up your sleeves, get to work, make some money, build a sick collection, feel great about what you did. Now, if you're going to spend that money, then you work into my third pillar. What are you willing to spend? It's up to you to determine the value you put on a card, a collectible, or anything else in your life. Now, comps in the sports card space are subjective. It always has been, but the masses want to tell you it hasn't. They throw out words like comps and definitive. But let's look at that for a minute. When you go to a card show or working at a trade online or in some other method, everyone refers to comps. But what most are really talking about is eBay sales data and not a full comp. I think our community gets wrapped up in this and forgets other ways cars can be bought or sold for that matter. If you look up recent sales, you're looking at the last 30 days of cards sold on a platform. Many folks are even cherry picking that data, trying to scroll past one that you don't see, or picking the combination that makes the price more along the line of what they wanted. If you're going with 30 days, then it should be an average of all sales for that card in the last 30 days, regardless of how high or how low. But even then, you have to take uniqueness into account. Is the card jersey numbered? How many colors are in the patch? Is the parallel a color match to the team? Or any 1 to n number of different things that can affect a card's value. Even if you're using something like 130 point, you're still not getting the whole picture. eBay is huge, but still only part of the equation. With 130 point, they give you eBay and MySlabs and some other online auction house data. But that's where it ends. I love 130 point. I think it's a great asset, but nevertheless, it's still a partial solution. They've put a lot of time and effort into 130 point, and they've done a great job, but they just cannot give you the full picture. Why would I say that? Well, for example, think about it while I'm about to tell you this list. Where do you buy cards? eBay, local card shops, card shows, MySlabs, online auction houses, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook Marketplace. That's just 8 places off the top of my head other than eBay, and a large portion of those aren't tracked. And we didn't even mention Craigslist, yard sales, and so many more. That makes the comps phrase not as accurate as you all think. Yet everyone you watch on YouTube or other locations is going to be referring to those comps as gospel. Now, there is a reason for that. Using eBay is easy. There's high volume, everyone can look at it, and it can be passed back and forth at a table at a show fairly easy. But in the truest sense, it's not a comp, it's just a partial. But what about those cool pricing apps? All right, let's do it then. Cardbase is focused on eBay sales, but does have some other cool items in it. The Sports Card Investor app is great, and it tracks online sales, but they're not accounting for Instagram, LCSs, card shows, or other in-person transactions simply because they can't. It's not a lack of want, it just can't be done. Market Movers is made by the same people that make the Sports Card Investor app. It's just a paid version on steroids. You can track a collection and do so much more than the Sports Card Investor app, but there's a monthly cost for it. It's probably worth it, but still has the same limitations that the Sports Card Investor app probably has. Collects is like the newer kid on the block, and they crawl online auction houses, eBay, and marketplace sites, but they have the same limitations that the Sports Card Investor or other app would have. Alt is another example of an all-encompassing app and marketplace. After all, they raised tens of millions of dollars in funding, and their focus is obvious but not all-encompassing. Look, these apps and many more like them are tremendous and huge assets to have, but it is not a full site picture. Not do it. And there's no technology that exists currently that shows that they can. What am I trying to say here? Look at the bigger picture before you get upset at a dealer or an individual you're trying to do a deal with if they're higher than the last eBay sale. Granted, some dealers or sellers are just flat out above anything considered a partial or full comp. But take a breather and stop and think for a second if you think they're so overpriced. Now, if you understand what the industry wants you to believe a comp is and how it's inherently flawed, it's time to understand what that means to you as a collector, an investor, or a flipper. Now you're tied to that comp to some degree, selling or flipping cards, because the value of your sale is being driven by the perceived price that people are willing to pay. Of course, rarity or scarcity would modify that level to some degree. It means you shouldn't ignore sell value or perceived pricing for cards, but you shouldn't use them as gospel either. At the end of the day, the price you should pay for something is the price you're willing to pay. If a card sells for $1,000, but you'd only spend $300, that's your price. Conversely, if a rare card comes around that you really want for your collection, and it only sells for $50, but you're willing to pay $200 because you really want it, then that's your price as well. Neither way is wrong. Value and price are not always the same thing. Only you know the answer. It really comes down to which part of the market you want to play with: buying or selling, flipping or investing or collecting. There's no wrong answer. Just don't be forced to lock yourself in to a specific comp or specific model in order to get anything done. So remember, at a very high level, if you don't worry about fear of missing out, if you can do a little research and think about pricing with an open mind, your experience could be a pillar of consistency and, frankly, a lot of fun.